right, we'll start off with these images by Kris, and this is for our mini photo essay. And remember, we want a beginning, a middle, and the end. And we want to start off with an image that brings us into this and establishes the scene, right? So this is a good example of that. He's probably up in his apartment and like the second or third floor, shooting down at his roommate. So we see all this space around his roommate. We see that we're in like an apartment complex here. We see that he is alone and that he has a mask on and he's reading his book. So it's kind of this like eerie feeling. Why is he out there with all this space around him by himself? And it's a beautiful day. It's nice and sunny. So this gives us an idea of what we're looking for. It's also an interesting crop, right? I would think if you were photographing this, you would want to keep the edge of the fire pit in. You'd want to keep these chairs in. But he's cropped in and put his subject at the very bottom and made the apartment up here more important. So this is showing that separation of him being outside, like that intent of him being away from his home is really important here. Then this is just a little bit of a closer shot of the same thing. He's looking up at us. And then this is the last shot. And I think this is the strongest of the three of them. As you're getting close to your subject, you have a really wide aperture, so the background falls out of focus. You have bright, hard light coming across his face. And we can see his book, and it makes you curious about what he's reading. It says principles, but we can't read anything else. And it really pulls me in. Now, as a photo essay, this is about him being exposed to COVID and self-quarantine. So the story is really relevant. This idea is really relevant. But the idea that he's self-quarantining, I don't know if that's a correct word, the idea that he's doing this is not necessarily clear. We see that he's outside, that he has a mask on, and it seems weird if he's by himself that he'd have a mask on. So we can expect that something is going on, but the self-quarantine doesn't totally come through. So I think adding one more shot that gives us that information, that allows us to know that's what this is about, would be helpful. I think you start to do that in that first shot when we see the apartment in the background and we see he's separated from that. You definitely have that overall shot, the detail shot, a portrait shot. You have that all coming together. So the distances, I think, work really well to still tell the story. We just need a little bit more information to know what this story is. And then these images are by Zixin. You're at ISO 800. Let's see, for all of these, 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, 800. So pretty high ISOs. Your story here is about pollution and people discarding trash at the ocean and the impact that has. So here you start off by showing us a detail shot. You get in close, you're showing us this this trash here and this piece here. I'm not sure what this is, but a detail shot. And then we move back and we see all of the trash. We see that this is a resort area and we have all this trash leading us back into the image. This seems like a good establishing shot. This seems like a good overall shot that gives us an idea of what the problem is. You're combining two things here. You're combining the paradise in the background with the palm trees and the hotel and the ocean, and then the reality of it here with all of this trash. Now, what we want from this series is that we're looking at portraits in all of these. So these first two images don't have any portraits in them. Then we move into this third image where we're seeing the portraits. We're seeing two people, though this seems very loose as far as a portrait goes, but we're not seeing the trash in here. So the idea that you're combining these two ideas, the pollution and the portrait, here we're not seeing that. Here we're just seeing two guys going out into the water. And same thing here. We're not seeing the impact of the pollution when you're adding the portrait. So combining an image like this, or getting low on the ground like you have here, and then having the subjects in the background, combining those two issues of the activities and the pollution, I think that is key here, and that's really missing from this series. What we need is an image that's combining the portrait and the pollution, and that's not happening in this series. So I would encourage you to reevaluate this, to really look at it and see how you could include more portraits, because this is a portrait class, in telling this story. If it's people picking up trash, if it's people throwing out trash, if it's people in the water and coming across trash in the water. I know for sure, like snorkeling and scuba diving, I've picked up trash when I'm out there. So I think there are areas where you could combine these two. And then this is the last. This is by Kassandra, and this is her cousin. Oh gosh, sorry, I'm forgetting if it's your cousin, that is bringing food to your aunt who got sick with COVID, and then eventually, I think you said your cousin also got sick. So showing this story of what it's like to be helping out someone with COVID, and just how limited our lives are right now. So I think this idea of him bringing food, we see him in a mask, we see him with the food. We don't know that he's bringing it to someone who's sick. And you said you didn't want to disturb your aunt because she's had a really hard time with her recovery from COVID. And I think that's understandable. But I think you could still push this a little bit so that we understood what he was doing. And maybe it's, like when someone has a new baby, they put a sign on their door like, please don't knock because you're going to wake the child, or whatever those signs say. You know what I'm talking about. It might be worth it to have something where he's about to knock on the door and you can tell he has food, and it tells him not to knock, not to disturb, but to leave something at the doorstep. Something like that to fill in the story so we're really clear on what his role is in this, I think could help. Here showing him on the computer. We don't see him talking to anyone else, but this weird social interaction that we're all limited with, I think is great to include here. Showing directly from the screen, as though we are him looking at the screen. I just think having someone else up in this corner so we could see that interaction would be really helpful. So I think this is a great idea. One step further again with this image. And then I think you can have an image just like this. An image where he's going from place to place, and this is part of what you're wanting to share, right? He's constantly on the move. He's trying to help everyone out. I think it's really interesting that he actually ended up, unfortunately, getting sick also, because that's a whole nother layer to the story, is all the people that are helping out, all the first responders are also getting sick. So he's not necessarily a first responder here, but he's helping out a family member, and he ends up falling ill. So this is a story that I think you could really expand on as you go forward. And all of the images don't need to be sad and him bringing food to her, or him only on the computer by himself. You can have some images like this that show his joy and his energy in helping people out. And the warmth of the sun on him is just beautiful in this image.